All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Administration for Community Living Caregiver AI Prize Challenge informational webinar. I'll briefly share a few logistic remarks. All attendees, other than panelists, will be muted during the presentation. Closed captions are available and can be turned on using the CC Show Captions button in the Zoom toolbar. ASL interpretation is available and the interpreter will be spotlighted on the screen throughout the webinar. Please submit your questions at any time using the Q&A questions bar in the Zoom toolbar. A dedicated Q&A session will take place at the end of the presentation. Answer to the questions will come at the end of the webinar. And that is all. Thank you. I will hand it off to you, Kelly.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Kelly Cronin. I'm a Deputy Administrator for Innovation and Partnership at ACL, and I'm joined here by Mary Lazare, our Principal Deputy Administrator and the leader of our agency, along with Dr. Jennifer Johnson, who's the Deputy Commissioner for the Administration on Disabilities. We've been working across ACL on this challenge, and we're excited to be able to explain more to you today and to take your questions and have a good dialogue. We really are hoping for a good participation and are thankful that so many of you have taken the time to participate today. So I'm going to first introduce Mary Lazare. She's going to offer some opening comments, and then Dr. Johnson and I are going to go over some of the parameters of the challenge, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. And based on what we hear today, we'll be able to update our frequently asked questions and have ongoing communication with everyone who is interested and wants to participate in the challenge. So first, I wanted to introduce Mary to everyone. She has been our fearless leader in this agency the second time she's back to serve. She has over 45 years of leadership experience in healthcare and long-term care and aging services, really just brings a tremendous amount of assets to our agency. She knows government, she knows the private sector. She has been instrumental in fostering us to get to this point where we are trying to encourage AI to support the caregivers, informal and paid workforce. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary to offer some opening comments.
Kelly, thank you very much. And thank you to all of you on the line listening and participating in this webinar today. I don't know how excited you are. We hope you are, but we are very excited to be able to kick this off with this webinar that'll give you the information you need and let you know, hey, I'm a good applicant for this and I want to proceed. So I thank both Kelly and Jennifer for their leadership on this, as well as many others in the room. I'm joined by Camille and Carolyn Ryan and many others in the Center for Innovation and Partnership, in the Administration on Disabilities, here at the Administration for Community Living, albeit ACL. So let's step back for a second and share with you, how did this all get started? Why are we having a prize challenge? Why is this necessary? Well, it started with ACL identified caregivers and caregiving, that whole umbrella topic, as its #1 priority this year. And the reason that it's a priority is because we know that at least 63 million family caregivers, within the kinship circle, there are 63 million people providing free care to individuals to keep them in their living situation in the community, out of institutional care. That is primarily based on the value of love and care for individuals, which is something we want to preserve in this country. We know how important it is. And the other reason is because that's what the care recipient prefers as well. I want to stay close to people I know, people who love me, people who I love, people who know me and know what's best for me. And that's what feels good. And so that's the genesis for this, that when 63 million people are providing this support and this care, it's the bedrock of the long-term care system in this country. It is the most significant force of caregivers in this country. That may be anything from providing meals and, oversight to someone living in their own home, to full-time care in someone's home, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Oftentimes, this is specialized care, tube feedings, injections, wound care, and the like, things like that that require some basic skilled capabilities and education. And people get nervous about that, right? People are not always really comfortable stepping in and doing that. I know I would be. I was pretty scared before I gave anyone an injection, and believe me, you wouldn't come to me as a nurse or a physician. So you can understand how caregivers feel when they step into those roles. It's because of love. Now, that doesn't forget that as well. Some people simply don't have the resources to live in, say, assisted living or other protective environments where those services are provided. So the demand for in-home care from paid care workers where we don't have family or we don't have family capable of providing the supports, the demand for paid in-home care exists. And that faces a very big critical issue as well. And that issue is that we're about 600,000 people shy of what we need to fill those roles. For some in a home health situation, it's called private duty services, or just a direct care worker providing that support. The 600,000 people shy of what the demand for is today. We know that's growing to 800,000 in the next few years. So that crisis of 63 million providing it and needing supports, and 600,000 to 800,000 shy of what we need. We know we've got to put a focus and attention on how do we stretch the capability of our family caregivers, and how do we stretch the capability of paid in-home caregivers. Now, when we talk about in-home caregivers or direct care workers, that does not exclude what we call direct support personnel or DSPs. And these are often people who provide day-to-day supports to people with individuals with disabilities. That may be someone who has a spinal cord injury and is incapable of doing a lot of different daily activities of daily living for themselves. Those people are important because it allows them to, one, live in community. It allows them to be employed and access supports and services, transportation, et cetera, and to be fully engaged in community. So we include those individuals as well in the number of 600,000 people shy. So having said all this, you see, this is a very important prize challenge because we now look to how does AI enable us to be quicker, more efficient, and stretch the capability of those caregivers we either do have or don't have. And how do we utilize AI to supplant those needs? So the growing gap threatens the health, safety, independence, and dignity of older adults, as well as people with disabilities. So the great forces here at ACL got their heads together and said, hey, rather than even issue through a grant process, this prize challenge brings all of you to us, those who are savvy, interested, passionate about this issue, are coming together. And today you're going to learn from the experts here at ACL, what are we trying to achieve through your expertise in bringing us novel innovations that will help us achieve the goals of supporting caregivers and providing that to both in-home family as well as paid care workers and direct support personnel. So I'm not going to take up any more time other than to say, this is why we're excited. This is why we're so happy to have you all on the line and interested. So please don't be shy, ask your questions. And we hope you stay involved and are part of the competition going forward. Thanks so much. And Kelly, I'm going to turn this back to you.
Thank you, Mary. That was great context to describe more about what we're doing with this challenge. I think Mary made many of these points already, but we are really trying to not only address the needs of family caregivers across homes and communities across the country, but we're also really trying to extend the direct care workforce. And by 2032, we know that the US is going to need approximately another 800,000 direct care workers to be able to respond to the growing demand for the supported home. So we have our work cut out for us. How can we together collaborate and innovate to be able to meet these demands, to be able to better serve and support family caregivers, but also extend this direct care workforce that, while we know we're currently in a crisis and don't have enough workers, we're projecting that that crisis is going to continue and will likely still have this unmet demand. So how can technology and AI help solve these problems? So the next slide is just a little bit more information about why did we choose a prize challenge. As Mary mentioned, this is not a typical grant opportunity or contract, which we often do in our agency and other agencies. This allows a more flexible way for federal agencies to ask for all of your expertise and innovative ideas and use them to help solve these problems. How can you together collaborate and come up with the new idea, the new solution that will be able to be introduced through this challenge and rewarded through this challenge? So we will be looking for teams to be submitting those solutions, and then we will be using expert judges to evaluate your solutions, and then we'll award prizes based on what the judges come up with. But more broadly, we would really like to drive both innovation and collaboration to support caregivers. But importantly, we want these solutions to be user-centered, affordable, and accessible, so that they can improve care and reduce burden. But we've heard from many people that there's a lot of great ideas often. A care worker, what does the home care agency need? How do these tools really meet those needs? And how is that driving the innovation? We also want to be encouraging and informing the broader adoption of AI tools across home care agencies so we can actually extend the direct care workforce over time. We know that AI can be transformational for both supporting family caregivers, but we really do want to encourage everyone to learn from each other. We want to have emerging best practices. How do we do this in a way that we can have open collaboration and transparency over the three stages of this challenge? So when we get into implementation, when we get into broader use of these tools, how do we share and learn on how to do this well and realize better support for caregivers, realize better care, and alleviate burden? Just also a quick note that all federal agencies are allowed to run these prize competitions or challenges under the American Competes Act, which was reauthorized in 2010 and then again in 2017. So the next slide is just laying out some of our vision for AI and caregiving and our overall goal, which is to leverage AI to improve the quality of care at home, to reduce caregiver burden, and again, strengthen the caregiving infrastructure so that we are better prepared for the future with our growing populations that want to be at home. The ideal AI solutions that we're looking to encourage are affordable, practical, safe, and scalable. They should strengthen caregiving in the home and the community, help meet growing demand for care without compromising quality. They should supplement and not replace human connection. We have some principles that will reinforce it. That's a really important point. And they should be really informed by the voices and experiences of caregivers. So again, that user-centered design is really critical. What's out of scope with our challenge is technologies that promote independence, but they don't directly support caregiving. And we can reinforce these points as we talk over the next 45 minutes. So the next slide are just some basic parameters of the challenge. If someone could advance the slides. Thanks. So this is how the challenge is basically sort of structured. We're going to have 2 tracks. They will each have 3 phases. So the first track is really going to focus on AI tools for the caregivers in the home. So both paid and unpaid caregivers. And then track 2 is really more geared towards how can AI tools be used to extend that caregiver workforce. So for the agencies that are employing the direct care workforce, how can they be supported with the right tools to support the workforce and deploy that workforce in care delivery. The next slide is just some basic AI principles that we have developed. This is in part through collaboration with FDA and some of our federal partners who have been doing similar initiatives. Our first principle is to protect privacy, dignity, and choice. Second is support human in the loop accountability. Really important to make sure that we are really listening to the eyes and ears in the home, the person that knows that individual best, and that AI is in support of that individual, and they can be accountable ultimately for how care is delivered. We want to support caregivers' well-being and reduce burden. We want to supplement but not replace human connection, which is so essential. We want to allow for personalized and flexible care. We want to promote safety, reliability, and transparency. And we want to ensure affordability and access. We recognize that some of these things are going to be demonstrated over all 3 phases of the challenge, but these are sort of fundamental principles that we want to have to guide the solutions that will be in each phase of the challenge. The next slide. I'm going to transition to Jennifer Johnson, and she's going to review the next several slides with you all.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you all for being on today's webinar. And I'm glad that you're able to join us and that you have such an interest in our prize competition. So I am going to take everyone through how the phase 1 prizes will work for us. So we have the 2 tracks for the prize competition. And for each of the tracks, we will award up to 10 prizes of $100,000 each. And we do expect to have up to 5 applicants in each track that may also receive a $50,000 meritorious award. So that would be a total of $150,000 an award if an entity that submits receives both the base award amount and then the meritorious award amount. And the criteria that we're looking at for the meritorious awards are in the announcement. At least one half of the track 1 winners must be focused on family caregivers, because again, we want to make sure that we are identifying solutions that really do assist family members who are supporting their loved ones to stay in their home. Next slide, please. In terms of the milestones for the prize competition, this slide is providing the key dates for phase 1. We have released the prize competition announcement, and we do have listed here a key date of April 15th to submit an intent to apply for the prize competition. I want to note that this is optional. You're not required to submit a letter of intent to apply, but doing so does help us plan for the peer review or the panels that we will be conducting of the submissions to evaluate them. So again, it helps us with the planning if you do submit an intent to apply. We also plan to host a second webinar in May, so please stay tuned and watch our website for more information about that. The full phase 1 applications are due July 31st at 5 p.m. and that is Eastern Standard Time. And we plan to announce the winners in September. And the dates will for phase 2 and 3 will be coming at a later date in the coming weeks. Next slide, please. This slide is providing information about eligibility and participation requirements. The eligibility that is described in the announcement is relatively, I think, straightforward in that the primary applicant must be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident over 18. And we do allow for multiple submissions as long as each submission is unique and different. So we don't want multiple submissions that are the same idea, same solution. Again, they can be submitted by the same entity, but they must be different types of solutions. In terms of the participation requirements, the winners do grant ACL permission to publicly share limited parts of their submission while retaining all other intellectual property rights. And another participation requirement is that only the phase 1 winners will advance into phase 2. Next slide, please. In terms of the application overview for phase 1, as I said, the applications are due on July 31st at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And what you'll need to include is team information for the team that is submitting the solution for the prize competition, an abstract that will provide a summary of the solution, and a narrative that covers 5 key sections, including need and design, implementation, usability, alignment with the AI principles that Kelly referenced earlier, and an optional meritorious section if you are also seeking to be eligible or considered for the optional meritorious award. We do ask, and in the guidance is keeping the submission to 15 pages and to follow the formatting rules and not to use HHS or ACL logos in your submission. Next slide, please. Kelly had mentioned that we will have subject matter experts that will be judging the submissions for this prize competition. We do have the judging criteria that is posted online with the overall announcement. It includes responsiveness to need, user-centered design, implementation, usability and integration, alignment with AI principles, and then a section on partnerships. There are details, again, on the website provided for each of these criteria areas. And again, submissions will be reviewed based on the criteria that has been published. And we will be utilizing federal and non-federal experts in the review of the submissions. Just note that each track has slightly different details in terms of the judging criteria, so make sure you do keep track of that based on what track you were applying for and that you are responsive to the judging criteria for the specific track you are applying to. Next slide, please. In terms of choosing your track and deciding what track you fall into, you want to look at, again, the focus of each of the tracks. So if your tool is for caregivers or direct care workers supporting someone in the home, then you're going to apply to track 1. And if it's built for provider organizations coordinating care across many clients, you're going to be in track 2. And if needed, if we review the submission and think that perhaps you've submitted in track 1 and we look at it and think, no, this fits better than track 2, we may reassign your track based on the screening of your submission and if we feel it falls better into one of the tracks. So that may happen, but this again is to guide you in terms of what track to submit to. And again, who is really the intended user of the AI tool. Next slide, please. One of the things that we do include in the prize competition description is looking at the technology readiness level. And we are requiring solutions at the technology readiness level of a 3 or higher, which means that you should have moved beyond the concept. If you are using an AI tool that you have developed on your own, again, moved beyond concept and begun your prototyping. We don't necessarily need a finished product. That is what can happen in phase 2. Again, we're looking for something that is least at the prototyping stage of development. There are resources in the prize competition description that do explain the technology readiness levels. And I believe we're sharing them in the chat and will appear there as well. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly, I believe at this point. But one of the things that we wanted to understand and ask this audience is the kind of expertise that you might like to connect with prior to submitting your phase 1 application. I believe we're going to be posting a poll on that one. And I see that it has been posted. But again, we're just trying to gauge whether there is an interest in connecting with specific types of experts as you're working on phase 1, and whether that may be fellow innovators in the field that you might want to collaborate with, or if it would be helpful connecting to caregivers who can provide direct insights or feedback on what it is that you are looking at in terms of a solution, whether it's access to technology or AI experts, if that would be helpful, or access to federal staff to address questions that you might have that only really federal staff can answer. Again, thank you for responding to the poll that's been posted to just give us a sense of what kind of experts you might be interested in connecting with. We will, during phase 2 and 3 of the challenge, provide applicants additional technical assistance and opportunities to connect with subject matter experts and stakeholders. But again, there may be interest in doing some of that during phase 1, which we're in right now. And if you also want to follow up by sending an email to the email address for this prize competition, please feel free to do so. We can also take this information by email.
Jennifer, I would just add that the first option for responding to potentially collaborate with other teams that are responding to this challenge is intended to encourage collaborative solutions to be submitted. We have noted that bundled solutions that meet more caregivers' needs or the direct care workforce needs could be more valuable in the end to caregivers and their families. So we do want to be able to enable that kind of collaboration if you're open to it as a team that wants to be part of the challenge. And if you can't respond today, you can let us know at another time, as Jennifer just noted.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the next slide. Um, So we have been getting some questions in already, and I know that I've been trying to kind of track the questions that have been coming in on the webinar, which is sometimes hard to do. But we did want to respond to some of the questions that have been coming in to us about the competition. And some of the questions coming in is related to defining disability and provided on this slide is that we are defining disability based on the definition that is in the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so we encourage you to reference that definition or utilize that as a point of reference for defining disability for this prize competition. In terms of other questions that we've been getting, we have gotten questions about what types of organizations are eligible to apply. I had shared a little bit earlier in terms of the basic eligibility, but this slide is sharing additional types of entities that are eligible to apply. It includes nonprofits, for-profits, government agency, cross organizational partnerships, as Kelly was just talking about in terms of collaboration across organizations, teams that may be working at the ground level, individuals are all eligible to participate in this challenge. And any of these organizations that we've identified here can be the primary applicant for the prize competition. And as I noted earlier, the American Competes Act does limit the eligibility to U.S. citizens, residents, and companies. So we cannot receive submissions from any foreign entities. Some questions we've been getting in is in regards to scaling, which will be a focus later on in the prize competition, particularly in phase 3, and whether the scaling would, whether we would support scaling through federal programs or the Medicaid waiver systems. We certainly don't have control or influence over other federal programs, so we can't require scaling or require those entities to participate in any scaling activities. But there's certainly, I would imagine, many opportunities to be able to, within federal programs, including the Medicaid waiver system, be able to demonstrate scaling within those environments. So they would certainly present opportunities, but again, we can't control any or influence their participation in that in any way. Next slide.
Jennifer, I think we inadvertently skipped a slide just to go over a couple more of the foundational definitions.
Okay.
So if
Can we go back one slide, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. So in terms of the potential support, we do on this side provide some additional information about what we mean by caregiver, and the prize competition that is online also includes this information. And so that is in our challenge definitions in the prize competition description. We also include it in the FAQ resource that's online, as well as on the resource, which is on the resource page. And the definition that we are using for caregiver is set out by the National Strategy to Support Family Caregivers, which is an ACL supported national strategy through our RAISE and SGRG committees, which is also available on the ACL website. But again, those resources are included in the challenge description itself that's online, where you can find the definition for caregiver. We've also received some questions about whether the challenge would include solutions for caregivers of children. And ACL is an H-span organization as it relates to our work in disabilities, because disabilities can be experienced across the lifespan. So we are from birth until death in terms of our work across disabilities. And while the competition is focused on caregivers of individuals with disabilities and older adults, we know that individuals with disabilities includes children with disabilities. And again, we are lifespan in that way. To be clear, however, if the solution is designed solely for caregivers of children without any type of disability, then it would not be eligible. So if it is caregivers of children in focus, then it would be children with disabilities that they are caring for. So that, again, would be the distinction there, that it would have to be a child with a disability that is the intended target population for the prize competition. And then there's been some questions about home and community environments and whether that includes nursing homes or other types of institutional settings. So this challenge does not include solutions that would be implemented or carried out in institutional settings. And again, our the competition is focused on solutions that would be carried out to support somebody in their home environment. Okay, and I think we've covered the other slide on the FAQs. And I think we're ready now to open it to questions
Thank you,
that are
Jennifer.
coming in through the webinar.
We will go ahead and take down these slides for the time being, and we will pull some questions out of the Q&A for Kelly and Jennifer to help us answer. We had one question come in about organizations that are past the technology readiness level of 3. Is there a cutoff point, or can organizations be at any technology readiness level past?
I would think we at least want as a minimum for them to be at the technology readiness level of 3. If they are past that, that certainly is still acceptable in terms of submissions. We recognize that there will be solutions that are at different stages of development. And so we, again, wanted to make sure that at a minimum, people were at a level 3 in level for readiness, and then anything beyond that.
Yeah, I would just add that I think we also got some questions in around sort of why is this considered the first stage, considered to be, or phase considered to be design, when we have a level list of 3 requirements. Part of that is because we like to be able to allow solutions to be far along enough, the R&D continuum, to be able to be viable for all 3 phases. So if you're at a systems development point in stage 3, you're more likely going to have the level of readiness you need to be able to continue to do some pilot testing and to implement more broadly, potentially in stage 3. So we're really intending to set sort of the minimum requirement here and not the upper limit.
Great. One of the questions was, can you provide some examples of acceptable or desired collaborations or community partnerships? I know we won't be able to cover them all, but can you give us some of the examples that you've been thinking of as you've designed this challenge?
Yeah, I'm happy to share some examples, and Kelly, feel free to jump in as well. as Camille said, we certainly know that there is going to be a range of solutions and potential partnerships, and we don't want to limit in any way innovation, and do encourage you to find not only partners that sort of are your connected partners, but those that you may not be connected to already. What is certainly central to and of the most importance for this prize competition is partnering with caregivers and the end users, and making sure that the solution is one that they can use and easily apply in their home environment. But partnering with caregivers can look different and be accomplished in different ways. It may be partnering with caregivers directly, or perhaps an organization of caregivers or that's representing caregivers. But that will again be an important element of the prize competition. In other community-based organizations that we would expect to see and probably would be helpful in terms of being able to put together a solution and also then be able to test it in a real environment. We do fund different disability programs here, including our Centers for Independent Living. And so we would think that Centers for Independent Living would be helpful partners in putting together a solution, but also designing, not only designing the solution, but also then testing and potentially scaling solutions. We also, within ACL, fund the area agencies on aging, and similar to SILS, they are at the community level and connected to individuals. And so they would likely be helpful partners in the design of solutions, but also potentially the testing and scaling. In addition to those community-based organizations, there are, we know, many other types of community-based organizations that are out there. They might be provider organizations, they may be self-advocacy organizations, they may be businesses that might not even be connected to this work, but may have some kind of interest or resources to bring to a solution. And along those lines, obviously technology and technology innovators will likely be helpful as well for partnerships for this prize competition. So we do just encourage you to think wide and broadly in terms of the potential partners that you could be working with in developing a solution for this prize competition. Kelly, anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, the only other thing I'd add is that we have a fairly substantial family caregiving support program, including lifespan respite. So not only respite services that are administered through the Aging Services Network, so state and state units on aging, area agencies on aging, but they subcontract with over 20,000 community-based organizations, and some of those include home care agencies. So the Aging Services Network is quite broad, and in addition to the Centers for Independent Living, there's many organizations that do serve people with disabilities. So there's a potentially, a lot of avenues to be able to partner with different organizations through those networks. And we're early on in trying to figure out sort of the operational aspects of that. Given that we're really just in a design phase at this stage, we're still assessing how best to set up that type of support for teams that go into stage 2 and 3, or phases 2 and 3. But stay tuned, we'll certainly be sharing more as that becomes more clear.
Great. We have a question, or a few questions to this line. What if your solution works for both direct care workers in the home, but also for the agency overall? Should you apply to track 1 or 2? Should you apply to both? Or should you submit one application?
As I mentioned earlier, there may be situations in which it is hard to decide whether it fits in one track or the other. And we recognize that it might be hard to exactly tease that out. And as I said, we may find that we switch submission from one track to another, because it does perhaps fit better in another track. But if there are questions about that, and you do want some more details or feedback on that, again, reach out to us via the email address for the prize competition. I'm not sure if we've posted it in the chat box for this webinar, but it is on the ACL website for this prize competition. And again, we can follow up by email on that specific inquiry.
Great, thank you. I do want to note we have a lot of questions coming in through the Q&A. If we don't get to your question today, we will be following up with additional FAQs, answering everyone's question after the call. Okay, next question, and please let me know if you want this to be one that we follow up about. Individuals were asking about, again, our definition of in the community, and we talked about not institutional settings. So particularly, individuals wanted to ask about assisted living and memory care, and also adult day services, adult day centers. Where do they fall within these definitions?
I think.
Go ahead,
You
Kelly.
want to say well, I think we've been really trying to think people who are truly living independently in the community is our primary point of interest. So someone who's going to adult day a few times a week is still really living independently in the community. But I think we're looking for applications that would be relevant to the supporting the caregiver at home. So we have not yet thought to prioritize or be inclusive of assisted living or memory care or adult day. It's I guess hypothetical. Some of these applications might apply to multiple settings, but our primary interest is the home environment.
Okay, next question. Will submitted proposals be made publicly available for viewing by the general public? With whom or where will these proposals be shared?
And are those any proposals that are submitted or proposals that are awarded? Did the question?
Could you answer both?
Okay. Well, we do, under the authority for conducting the prize competition, we can make certain aspects of applications publicly available. As the federal government is required to follow Freedom of Information Act requirements. So it is feasible that these could be shared publicly through that mechanism with information that would be redacted as is processed with those kinds of requests. But we don't have specific plans at this point for posting the awarded applications publicly. But for example, we may and will likely want to share perhaps the abstracts from the awarded submissions for awareness of the types of solutions that are being tested and implemented through this prize competition.
Going back to readiness levels, is a functional prototype required in phase 1 or only the written planning for the product development, chosen approach and team?
I know that I don't have the information to be able to specifically answer that question. I don't know, Kelly, if you do, and you would be able to respond to that, but that might be one we have to follow up on.
I think it would be good to have something in writing on that so it's clear to everyone.
Great. We'll follow up in writing in our updated FAQs to make sure we're more clear about this question. A question was, teams are encouraged to submit their intent to apply by Wednesday, April 15th. Will feedback or questions on the intent letters be provided?
We will, like I said, we'll be using the letters of intent to apply just for our planning purposes, so we can start identifying the number of subject matter experts that will be needed to do the judging of the submissions. We do not expect you to provide the kind of information that would where you would get, and we do not plan to provide feedback on the submission, the potential submission or your solution, and whether it one seems like one that would be viable. That all will be done again through the judging process once we receive the individual submission. So again, the letter of intent date of April 15th is not intended to tell us anything about your solution. Again, it's just to tell us that you plan to submit a solution or for the prize competition, so that then again we can use that information. If we anticipate getting 50, we know how many judges we need to get. But if we have 100 entities that are indicating they're going to submit submissions to us, then that means another thing in terms of identifying judges for the judging process. So again, it's just for our planning purposes.
Okay, another quick question. Where can we find information about Aging Services Network?
I'm sorry, information on the Aging Services Network?
Yeah, we have information on our website around the Aging Services Network. We can also be posting a summary of sort of the number of people that are served, sort of broadest level across all programs. We're reaching around 10 million older adults every year through a spectrum of programs. And again, sort of funded through state units on aging primarily, that then contract with over 600 and roughly 20 area agencies on aging. And then they work through roughly 20,000 community-based organizations to deliver a variety of programs and supports. But we do have a lot of information on our website, and we'd be happy to sort of maybe add a synthesis of that to help those challenged participants who may not be familiar with it.
And just to add to that, in addition to the information about the aging network and programs that we support in ACL, we also have information about the disability programs that we support in across the United States. I mentioned the Centers for Independent Living earlier. We also provide funding to state councils on developmental disabilities and to protection and advocacy systems and university centers for excellence in developmental disabilities. So there are one of each of those in every state and territory. We also fund traumatic brain injury state partnership grants in 31 states. And in addition to the Centers for Independent Living program, we also, under that program, have independent living service grants to each state. So again, that information is on the website, and I will also drop into the chat box a database, an online database that you can search to find the contact information for those programs in your state and local area.
Thank you. So we had some questions about what phase 2 and 3 will look like. Can you give a general overview of what comes after phase 1?
I can start. So we're interested across all three phases in allowing for not just showing the promise of the solution in the design phase, but also evaluating what it's like when it's going through pilot testing. So looking at the end user experience and trying to understand the whether it initially does work in a real world setting. So gathering that experience and evaluating and judging that experience in stage 2 to then be able to determine, the viable or best solutions that can go on to phase 3, which is really intended to be broader implementation with the potential to scale and be sustainable. So looking at implementing in a larger number of environments, supporting more caregivers, potentially implementing across a home care agency if it's to support the direct care workforce and the deployment of that workforce. So it's really intended to sort of increase the size and scope of the testing and implementation over all 3 phases, and judging that and rewarding those that do that really well and can prove that care is improved, that burden is reduced, that the direct care workforce is actually extended through these solutions, in keeping with the principles that we laid out earlier.
And I would just add to that, picking up on Kelly's comment about built based on the AI principles. One of the things that I just wanted to point out or reinforce is that when we talk about extending the workforce and using AI, we don't seek to have AI solutions that would replace the human and the caregiver when that really is needed and necessary. And so that is incorporated into our principles, and we want to make sure that we are identifying AI solutions that, again, really are supporting the caregiver, the direct care worker, and not, again, replacing them where, they really are needed to do that the support that they are providing. And the other thing I would add, as Kelly was saying, in terms of the implementation and testing, there will be a need to demonstrate the success, and that may be demonstrated in different ways, but we'll want to make sure that in the solutions that we have identified as being the most promising, that in the testing environment, they are indeed promising and that they do show evidence of effectiveness. And again, that will be determined in different ways based on the design of the solution, but it will be important to be able to be ready to document how the tool is successful.
Thank you. We are now at time for the webinar. Thank you both for your insights today. As I mentioned, we'll be following up with documents that respond to all the questions we've received. We believe have posted in the chat our email address so that if there are any additional questions, please submit them there.
Well, and I just want to close by saying thank you very much for joining us today. We've had a great turnout and really excited and encouraged by the interest in our prize competition. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what we get in here as solutions for and that could really be supportive of caregivers and direct care workers and older adults and people with disabilities. Kelly, did you want to say anything to close out?
Yeah. That was great. Thank you all for your time, and we'll be in close contact, and don't hesitate to reach out if you still have questions.
Thank you.